Yesterday, the White House stood by an internal review that cleared Johnny Dock, a then 25-year-old travel office volunteer who was paid per diem. They cleared him of involvement in the 2012 prostitution scandal in Cartagena, Colombia. Citing documents and interviews, the Washington Post reported on Thursday that senior White House aides were given information at the time suggesting that a prostitute was an overnight guest in Dock's hotel room. The Post also reported that White House officials were alerted, but that information was never thoroughly investigated or publicly acknowledged. Dock did not speak to the Post, but his attorney called those allegations, quote, utterly and completely false. White House spokesman Eric Schultz told reporters yesterday that White House lawyers looked at these allegations and found there was nothing to them. I want to bring in the Washington Post's Carol Leonnig, who reported this story. Carol, good to see you as always. The White House says at least 2 people were wrongly implicated in Colombia based on an inaccurate hotel record, one of whom was a Secret Service personnel member. The other was a White House advance volunteer, and that they concluded in their White House review that the hotel record was erroneous. Is that their story?
The White House has said a lot of different things over the last 2 years about why a White House staffer likely wasn't involved and why their review was very thorough and they found nothing to it. This issue of the mistaken identity seems to me a red herring. You know, it's demonstrably false to say that the only evidence, which is what the White House is saying, that the only evidence involving this guy was that a woman had signed herself into this room. We've looked and reviewed the investigators' real-time notes on what they asked at this hotel at the Hilton, and what they learned is that 3 people on the U.S. delegation appeared to have signed in themselves, registered a guest, a female foreign national, into their rooms, likely a prostitute. And the Hilton made clear to investigators that there was no way a woman could just write a number down for a room in the president's hotel where there was a lot of high security, that there's no way a woman can do that. The guest, who's the paying guest, the U.S. delegation member, has to present this woman at the desk, has to agree that she's coming with him into his room. She has to present her identification number and her actual ID. They photocopy the woman's ID. And for each of these 3 personnel, the Hilton said, that is what happened. And we've looked at those notes, so
make of it what you will. Carol, you also reported that staffers in the Homeland Security Department, Inspector General's office, who raised questions about a White House role, said that they were put on administrative leave as punishment for doing so. What's the White House said about that?
The White House says that a Senate investigation, bipartisan Senate investigation, concluded that there was no credible evidence to back up this investigator's claims. But what the Senate report actually concluded was that they didn't have any information to substantiate this, because the Inspector General, who was the person allegedly ordering the deletions of the White House staffer references from the report, that acting Inspector General refused to turn over any of his internal correspondence. So the Senate investigation said, hey, we looked at this. We couldn't figure out if the Inspector General was retaliating against people who questioned his deletions. However, one important thing, Craig, this Inspector General resigned 3 days before he was supposed to come before a hearing of lawmakers and answer questions about this. And the Senate report substantiated in the times that he did give over his documentation, he did alter and stall reports that were sensitive about the administration at the request of administration political aides.
Carol Leonnig, Washington Post. We're going to continue to follow this story, as I know you are as well. Thank you so much for coming by.
Thanks, Craig.
Up next.